There's a lot of topics here today, guys. So I think we should probably start off with the Bessemer, Alabama union vote. Last Friday, it was announced that the workers at that particular plant had overwhelmingly voted against a union. However, um, there have been more perfect union and a couple other union organizations have alleged foul play on behalf of Amazon, up to and including um, trying to pressure USPS in order to create fake drop boxes and otherwise intimidation. So the National Labor Board will be involved, and it seems that there's going to be another vote. So um, does anybody else want to add to that particular situation?
Well, I mean, it's typical that in a labor, what is it called? It's in any situation where organized labor is a concern, that management is going to be bearing down hard on these folks. I mean, not only threatening their incomes, not only threatening their livelihoods, not only, especially during a pandemic when they're most vulnerable, but also bombarding them with all sorts of anti-union propaganda. You know that they're in what is it called? It's mandatory meetings, uh, uh being what is it called? It's ministered to by labor relations experts, but I like to call them what is it called? It's union busters.
Right.
It is not an enviable position for the organizers. But I mean, like, even had the results been different, I think it was still going to be a terrible uphill battle for these organizers to get this facility to organize. I mean, what was it? The vote came out to, like, it was essentially 2-1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing that we also have to take into consideration here is, I mean, it's. I think on another. I think that it's important. Even if the union vote failed, they are going to get another crack at this. But I think more importantly, the good work that Ken Klippenstein of the Intercept and various other outlets has done, revealing, or at the very least making more apparent to everybody else about how things are so bad within Amazon warehouses that warehouse workers are literally peeing into bottles and drivers are pooping in bags. I mean, even if this vote were to have failed, I think that the Amazon up to the highest level, and I'm talking Jeff Bezos here, they are in damage control right as we speak. So I think that good did come out of this, even though it wasn't the intended result that we would have wanted. In this case, the Amazon workers and the Bessemer, Alabama plant organizing properly.
I'd like to say, like, one quick thing here. How dare they? No, like, seriously, how dare they think they can waste the company's time by peeing in freaking bottles whilst on their shifts?
Mm-hmm.
Who do these urban people think they are? I mean,
Oh, hey.
I'm a minority. I'm sorry.
But like
So
what I thought, or I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
I was just gonna say, bigger picture here. I find unions to not be the proper solution to our economic issues. Not shitting on unions at all in terms of, like, if you're pushing for a union, have at it. Like, don't stop what you're doing. Well, necessarily anyway. My thinking is that it's like a small hill, but it's still Sisyphusian in nature. You're constantly pushing the boulder up the hill, and it's going to constantly roll back. They're going to keep finding ways to bribe union leaders. They're going to keep finding ways to ruin your rights as a union through the law, or your right to unionize through the law. Whereas an actual solution that that might be a bigger hill at first, but there's actually a top of the hill, is worker-owned co-ops. Like, I think
Yes.
that's the thing, is we should get out of the idea that the union is the only answer. I guess if anything is what I'm pushing back
I
here.
actually agree with you quite a bit on that. Yeah, I have a very similar view to mutual aid, in the sense that it, it's dealing with the symptoms of capitalism as opposed to driving towards the root cause. Yes, unions are great, but you're still operating within a paradigm in which you are still the weaker party. You don't own this business. You have influence because you all decided to get together, but would you rather have control? Would you rather have democracy within your workplaces? These are things that, I mean, we have political democracy. Why not economic democracy? I mean, it's like second nature. Why put up with an unequal relationship in which you have to fight to have even the slimmest of says?
In an
That,
ideal, oh, go ahead, David.
well, and that's the core argument of the economist Richard Wolff, right? Is worker self-directed enterprises. And I think I think it's an excellent point. Which the point he makes is we think of ourselves as living in a democracy, but the place we go to 40 hours a week is not democratic.
You do not live in a democracy.
Well, and obviously the democracy word is a whole thing. But also to speak further to that, I thought what was interesting was there seemed to be a dynamic where workers couldn't decide to vote for or against the union because they were afraid if there was a union that the warehouse would be moved, and that was kind of like this looming shadow or threat in the background. So I think that really speaks further to that point of like, even if these workers had voted in favor of a union, it wouldn't necessarily protect them from the abuses of corporations like Amazon. And all of this, of course, in the backdrop of Jeff Bezos, earning so much, becoming a billionaire, right, last year, or he was he already a billionaire?
I think he might have hit the billionaire mark last year, but yeah, he was
record profits. He's the richest man in the world.
His wealth is considerable. Let's say that. Yeah.
Yes.
And he's sitting here, and he actually he approved his company for making like public statements on Twitter against this and everything, and it's very obscene.
It is.
Like that amount of wealth, and to push back against people who just want to maybe not pee in a bottle, like.
To add to this, I think a little bit of historical context is needed because certainly this isn't the bad old days of union busting in which Pinkerton agents, who literally were the first private detectives, were hired to physically to crack skulls and otherwise gun down union workers on strikes. It's not those bad old days, but that doesn't mean that union busting techniques aren't just as formidable, especially in our technological age, where I wouldn't be surprised in the least if Amazon was hiring private investigators to dig up dirt on various organizers. And I mean, they did it with the guy Smalls. Was he the one?
Yeah, in point of fact, there was a great many leaked communications, and they were at the highest levels talking about Chris Smalls and trying to tarnish his reputation because he was catching on. And shout out to Chris Smalls and the what is it called? It's the Congress of Essential Workers who are trying their darndest to unionize. What is it called? It's the folks slaving away in Amazon facilities.
And to that as well, I recall back when Hassan Minaj had his show Patriot Act on Netflix. He did a really good episode, I think, informative episode on Amazon. He pointed out that the retail side is actually losing money in the same way that Uber is because they're pursuing complete and utter monopoly. The real profit is in their Amazon Web Services, where they literally rent out server space to big sites out there. Basically, most of the sites that we use, in fact, I think it's like a third of the internet, if not more, is Amazon Web Services a web space, basically. So with that in mind, like, yes, nobody's going to argue here that that Jeff Bezos has an obscene amount of wealth, but it's also scary that at this point, I think it says more to where we don't have the kind of state infrastructure to deliver needed commodities. There's nothing like that on a state or a governmental level. We depend on private enterprise to do this, and what comes out of this is the utter abuse of the workers to where, like I said, they're peeing in bottles and pooping in bags to keep up. I would say that, and I do agree with Steve's point that unionization is one aspect of it. But I would like to reiterate that if the powers that be at Amazon were so scared of this one location unionizing, you can only imagine what will happen if a plant succeeds in doing so. I've heard that the one of the Chicago plants they're considering unionizing. You best believe after this, there are going to be plants all over this nation that are going to make the attempt to unionize. So as far as I'm concerned, watch this space because it's only a matter of time. I truly believe this that Amazon does become unionized, basically.
And also, I would mention, like, at the very least, with some idea that when you come to the negotiating table, your starting pitch should be high.
Hmm.
I would say it's even still a little low at this bar, but raise that bar at least up to where you start out by demanding what I think would be proper justice in this case. If a corporation, a publicly traded stock corporation, has committed serious atrocities towards its own workers, then the punishment to them and every corporation moving forward should be you're going to be under threat of being forced to give your corporation to your workers, to
Yep.
form your corporation into a worker-owned co-op. You can
For
get back something that might, pass for, you still had your investment, but the massive profits that are coming from these workers, not going to be for you anymore. It's going to be to them.
in a more ideal situation, our government would be threatening nationalization right now. At minimum, they would be threatening breaking up this monopoly. But the Biden administration seems only too happy to continue things the way they are vis-a-vis the. I mean, the fact that he hasn't done anything about student debt or the kids still in cages should tell you everything about
Mhm.
what they think about what's going on in Amazon. But I feel those would be topics that we could discuss for another time.
Yeah.
I think we're all in agreement here. Solidarity to complete and uncritical support to the people who are attempting to organize within Amazon and all workers in general. Actually, solidarity and uncritical support to our brothers and sisters working who are now considered essential labor and aren't really being compensated the way that we would hope essential workers should be.